Pratitha Kripaya Shri Gurum Tham Natosmi Jai Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Sunda Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. So today is the holy day of Rath Yatra, the annual event, festival, where Jagannath, Subhadra, Baladev are taken from their grand temple in Puri down the main road, on the three Rath carts to the Gundicha temple. And it's a famous event attended these days by millions of people, something over 1 million people. 3 million now.
It's a big religious festival on earth.
Well, Kumbh Mela is, but it's probably the biggest annual one, I'd imagine.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
So, yes, it's growing and growing every year. And it is an iconic and important festival in the Gaudiya Vaishnav calendar because primarily of its association with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who spent 24, Jai Srila Gurudev, who spent, Jai Hare Krishna, who spent the last 18 years of his life continuously at Jagannath Puri. So this makes it one of the three primary tirthas in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Navadvip, of course, Navadvip Mayapur, the birthplace and the place of Mahaprabhu's Leela for the first half of his life. Jagannath Puri, Mahaprabhu's place of residence, pretty much for the second half of his life. And Vrindavan, of course, Krishna's birthplace. There are many other tirthas such as Kurukshetra, Dwarka, but these three, you could say that these three are kind of primary pilgrimage places, holy places, tirthas. Holy place is known as a tirtha in Sanskrit. So, Jagannath Puri is also known as Sri Kshetra or Sri Kshetra. Kshetra. Kshetra means a place or a field, a location. Kurukshetra, the place of the Kurus. Kurukshetra. Purushottam. Jagannath Puri is also known as Purushottam Kshetra. Purushottam. Purusha has two words, Purusha and Uttam. It means the topmost person. Purusha means a person, Uttam means at the highest level. So the person who is at the topmost person, i.e. God. So the place of God, Purushottam Kshetra. The Bengalis will say it Kshetra, because when you get an S after a K in Bangla, in Bengali, they pronounce it a little bit like a aspirated H, or like an H, Kshetra. So that is why you'll hear people saying Bhakti Rakhak instead of Bhakti Rakshak. That's the Bengali pronunciation. So you'll hear Srila Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj, Bhakti Rakhak Sridhar Maharaj. That's how they pronounce it. They don't say Parikshit Maharaj, they say Parikit. That sounds a little better to the English ear, that one, doesn't it? So Parikshit is Parikit. Kshatriya. They don't say Kshatriya, they say Kshatriya. So when the S comes after the K, then it's silent. It's pronounced like an H. Kshatriya, Parikit, Rakhak, Kshetra, Purushottam Kshetra. So every year, of course, Mahaprabhu goes to Puri. Why does Mahaprabhu go to Puri? We should start there. Is because after he takes sannyas, he wants to go to Vrindavan. If we read the sannyas Leela as given in the primary biographies, Chaitanya Bhagavat, Chaitanya Charitamrita, he's intoxicated with love for Krishna and he wants to go to Vrindavan, but he is then trickily misdirected to the house of Advaita Acharya through the devices of Nityananda Prabhu and Advaita Acharya. And they want to help him settle down because he's wandering around. He hasn't eaten for 3 days and they're concerned about his health and his well-being. So they take him to Shantipur, where they stay for 10 or so days. And all the devotees, they arrive there, including Sachimata. And she requests him to stay at Jagannath Puri. And it is the ideal location because as a sannyasi, he shouldn't be staying too close to his family, to his mother and his ex-wife. But also, there is still some link maintained. So he still has respect for his mother and she still has attachment and respect for him. So it is settled. She asks him to stay at Jagannath Puri, and that is settled. It's not too far away, but it's not too close either. To go from Navadvip to Jagannath Puri would take approximately 10 days in that era, 540, so 50 years ago. Before the age of railway and motor cars, they'd use bullock carts, boats to cross rivers, bullock carts mainly, and walking if necessary. And that journey would take 10 days. Could be done by land, or part of it could be done by river. You can go down the Ganga and down the coast. I haven't heard of them going actually right down the coast, as in out of the mouth of the Ganges into the Bay of Bengal and down the coast to Puri. I haven't heard of that route being taken. Presumably it could be. But we read when Mahaprabhu is going on his first pilgrimage north out of Puri some 5 years after taking sannyas. It's known as his first attempt to go to Vrindavan. It's given in the Madhya Lila. Then we hear of him taking a boat from the border of Orissa in Bengal down the main river, whatever the river's name is, out into just into the Bay of Bengal, and then up the Ganges, past what is modern-day Kolkata, and then disembarking somewhere there. So that's a significant portion of the journey between Jagannath Puri and Navadvip done by boat. We hear at that time how the somewhat a little bit of a rogue, drunkard Muslim governor of that area actually ended up helping Mahaprabhu. He was considered a threat because his province, the province under his rule, was somewhat dangerous for travelers. Him being a king and also with an intoxication habit, it was, considered a risky province to transit through. But due to the influence of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, he actually becomes what you'd call a devotee temporarily. And he builds a new boat for Mahaprabhu, including one with a little house on it. You know those boats you see in the pictures, they've got a little house on them. And employs one of his best boatmen to charter Mahaprabhu with a company of 10 soldiers for protection, all the way down this pirate-infested stretch of water out of the river into the Bay of Bengal and up the Ganga. So the most difficult part of the journey between Orissa and Bengal, he helps Mahaprabhu with that. And as a gratitude, at the end of the journey, we hear how Mahaprabhu takes off his head scarf, his headpiece, and he gives it to the boatman for his skilled service in navigating these treacherous waters, which is very rare. We don't hear many instances of Mahaprabhu giving a personal item to someone. It's considered very special mercy. Anyway, that journey would take approximately 10 days. And that journey was done on an annual basis by a varying number of devotees from Bengal. So 10 days, we may see a 10-day journey as an epic journey with today's, in today's world of modern, fast-paced vehicles, transits. But back then, it wasn't so long. Vrindavan would take a lot longer. And Vrindavan was even more treacherous. There were certain areas, for instance, on the other side of Varanasi, where you had to be particularly careful. You had to travel only during certain times of day, on certain roads. Otherwise, the chance of being mugged, robbed, maybe worse, killed, was very, very high. We hear this when Jagadananda is going to Vrindavan. Mahaprabhu allows him to go, and Mahaprabhu says, you have to instruct him particularly to travel by a particular road to avoid being waylaid. So it's settled that Mahaprabhu will stay in Puri after his sannyas. And as a result, he ends up spending the last 18 years of his life in Jagannath Puri. And it is already a tirtha. Puri is an ancient tirtha that traces its history. The history of the deity is traced back to one Maharaj Indradumna, who has the deities as we know them, in the form we see them today. He has them carved. But it is an ancient place of worship. And it is also, then it was further made famous, well known, because Shankaracharya established one of his char dham, char meaning four dhams, one in South India, one in West, one in East, and one in North. So Shankaracharya's idea was to put a cross over India like this, with its holy places. One in Sringeri or Kanyakumari. There's two in the south. There's one, the official one, I believe, is, I forget, anyway, near the bottom. Then the western one is Dwarka, and the northern one is Badrinath, the place of Vyasadeva, and then the eastern one is Jagannath Puri. So in the 8th century, some 1200 years ago, Shankaracharya established his mats like this as a cross over India. So Puri further became famous for that. Interestingly, the abbot, the head, each mutt of Shankaracharya has a head called the, I don't know, anyway, it's the pontiff of the mutt. And interestingly, the pontiff of the Puri mutt, in the 13th century, some couple of hundred years before Mahaprabhu, his name was Sridhar Swami. And he is a famous commentator on the Bhagavatam. We hear the commentary of Sridhar Swami. It's referred to by our acharyas. It's referred to by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, by Srila Gurudev, Guru Maharaj. All the Vaishnava acharyas refer to the commentary of Sridhar Swami. And Mahaprabhu gave that commentary. Originally it was Mahaprabhu who authorized that commentary for all of his followers thereafter. And although he was the abbot, the pontiff of Shankaracharya's mutt, which is classic Mayavad, Shankaracharya taught classical Mayavad. So his mutts, of course, teach the same thing. We have the head of that mutt moonlighting as a Vaishnav. Now he writes a commentary on the Bhagavatam, which is not unheard of for Mayavadis. They accept the Bhagavatam as a literature, but their interpretation of it varies drastically from that of a Vaishnav. So when the head of their mutt, he writes a commentary which is in line with devotional sentiment. It gives a devotional interpretation of the Bhagavatam, which is a direct interpretation. It's like an Occam's razor interpretation. There is no complexity, no convoluted wrestling of interpretations from what is actually quite clear. Anyway, when he gives a devotional commentary, all of the other fellows in the mutt are like, what is this? We're a Mayavad school, and you're giving us a devotional commentary on the Bhagavatam? So the famous story is that they take it before the Kashi Vishwanath temple in Varanasi. They say if we present it to Lord Shiva, he will show us a sign whether this is an authorized commentary or not. And Lord Shiva, of course, he endorsed it. He endorsed the commentary. And the famous sloka, Vyasaveti no veti va is one of the lines, and I haven't memorized the whole thing. But Lord Shiva says that I know the meaning of the Bhagavatam. Vyas may or may not know. He says, I know the meaning. Sukadev knows the meaning. Vyas may or may not know. He says the meaning is very difficult to understand. So he gives it in his endorsement. And anyway, Puri is famous for Shankaracharya's mutt. And then in the 12th century, the current temple as we know it was built. So it's already an established place of pilgrimage when Mahaprabhu arrives in 1509. After taking sannyas, he spends a month in Puri. He converts Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and then the next month he embarks on his journey throughout South India. He returns 2 years later, spends another few months at Puri, then embarks on his first journey to Vrindavan, which is aborted, and then he comes back. And then the following year he actually goes to Vrindavan. And then he comes back and he spends the rest of his life, the last 18 years of his life, in Puri exclusively. He doesn't leave. The first 6 years of those 18 were fairly public. So Mahaprabhu's age of, say, 30 to 36, they were relatively public, where he would mix and mingle with the devotees quite freely. But the last 12 years, from age 36 to 48, he didn't mingle with anybody. Oh, not anybody, that's not true. But he kept a lot more of a private lifestyle, spending a lot of time in the Gambhir and tasting Radharani's separation from Krishna. And during Mahaprabhu's time, and during his life in Puri, every year he would celebrate with great enthusiasm the Rath Yatra festival. So he would dance in front of the cart of Mahaprabhu. He would organize all of his devotees into various kirtan groups. This is all described in the Madhya Lila, and portions of it in the Antya Lila as well. So he would display his ecstatic symptoms, and he would sing this verse saying, "It is the same beloved, it's the same me, the same them, but it's different. We're in a different place, and we're longing to be back in the place where we first met." And many of the devotees didn't understand this composition because it was not overtly devotional, the song he was singing at the Rath Yatra. But Rupa Goswami understood. And so he composed a devotional interpretation of it, or a devotional, say, version of it. And it is expressing Mahaprabhu's mood of Radharani meeting Krishna at Kurukshetra. Radharani and the gopis have come to Kurukshetra to observe the solar eclipse. And there they meet Krishna as a king in all his royal regalia, dressed up as a king with attendants, entourage, queens, soldiers, wealth, power, pomp, etc. And here they are, these gopis, these simple village girls with hearts of gold, and they've come missing Krishna for years, and they see their Krishna, but the atmosphere is so different, it is not conducive to the sweet Madhura Rasa Vrindavan. Where there is Aishwarya, where there is grandeur and glory, there cannot be intimacy and sweetness. One must go before the other can flourish. Both ways. For Aishwarya to flourish, there cannot be intimacy, sweetness. And for intimacy and sweetness to flourish, there cannot be grandeur and glory in the relationship. So there is a conflict. It's impossible for the Madhura Ras of the gopis to be properly expressed when they meet Krishna at Kurukshetra for the solar eclipse. But in their hearts, they want to drag him back to Vrindavan, to the location, to the environment which is conducive to the sweetness of their feeling, to express that Madhura Ras relationship. And to how it was before, when Krishna was a cowherd boy, when he was not a king, when he was not surrounded by power and wealth, so many attendants, so much grandeur and glory. Drag him back to the simplicity of Vrindavan, the sweetness and the beauty of the Madhura Ras environment, the Yamuna, the flute, the trees, the cows. So Mahaprabhu is singing this poetry at Rath Yatra, and no one can really understand except Rupa Goswami. And so Rupa Goswami composes a verse, translating and defining the meaning of Mahaprabhu's song, what Mahaprabhu is singing. And Rupa Goswami says that it is Radharani's yearning to take Krishna from this meeting at Kurukshetra back to Vrindavan, back into the sweet Vrindavan environment. And Rath Yatra is a symbolic, is taken from here, the Gaudiya Vaishnav understanding of Rath Yatra is that it is based absolutely on this sentiment of the gopis meeting Krishna at Kurukshetra and wanting to take him back to Vrindavan. So Kurukshetra, Jagannath Puri is seen as Dwarka, the Vaibhav, the grandeur of Dwarka, but also Dwarka as in, or Kurukshetra as in Dwarka Krishna being in Kurukshetra. And the gopis are wanting to take Krishna, or the pulling of the cart is symbolic of the gopis wanting to pull the chariot of Krishna from Kurukshetra, from the Dwarka atmosphere, back to Vrindavan. So pulling the cart along the Grand Trunk Road from Jagannath Puri Temple to Gundicha Mandir is the gopis, is symbolic of the gopis pulling Krishna from his princely position back to the beautiful simplicity of Vrindavan, which is conducive to the Madhura Ras and the deep love of the gopis. So that is the meaning, that is the inner meaning of the Rath Yatra festival, as expressed by Mahaprabhu himself. This was the bhava, this was the sentiment in which Mahaprabhu was immersed, which was causing the expression of astasatvika bhavs, ecstatic symptoms as he chanted and danced in the Rath Yatra. He would roll on the ground, horripilation, hairs standing on end, shivering, going pale, changing color, going pale, body temperature changing, crying, frothing at the mouth, rolling on the ground. All of these symptoms of spiritual emotion so powerful that it absolutely overrides the function of the nervous system, and one loses control of their body, such as the intensity of the spiritual emotion that is coursing through one's system. So Mahaprabhu is displaying all of this, and this is the intensity of Srimati Radharani and the gopis wanting to pull Krishna back to Vrindavan. So that's the meaning of Rath Yatra. And that is why when one person wanted to do Rath Yatra in Navadvip, Param Gurudev cautioned against it. Because what is Navadvip? Navadvip is Gupta Vrindavan, which means hidden Vrindavan. And where are you going to take Krishna if he's already in Vrindavan? The only place you can drag him is out. If you're in Vrindavan and you take Krishna out, then it's reminiscent of, who is it? Akrura, who comes to take the gopis. No, Akrura who comes to take Krishna from Vrindavan to Mathura, initially when Krishna leaves Vrindavan to fight Kamsa. As Akrura arrives on the chariot. So the sight of a chariot in Vrindavan is dreadful to Radharani and the gopis. Whereas so it's completely incongruous with the Navadvip Leela, which is the Vrindavan Leela. So Param Gurudev, living in this world, understood that incongruity and cautioned against it. It's not that just, Rath Yatra it's not like it's just a whimsical, willy-nilly type festival, which can be done without any consideration of the deeper meaning. It's not a game. But Param Gurudev did say that if you do want to do it in Navadvip, then the clue of how to do that has been given by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And that is when Mahaprabhu, on his first attempt to go to Vrindavan, when he arrives at Navadvip, he stays at the house of Vidya Vichaspati, who is the older brother of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and he is mobbed by people coming from all around the various districts. Vidya Vichaspati's house actually is pretty much demolished. His gardens and his perimeter wall is completely demolished by the crowds of enthusiastic people coming to see Mahaprabhu, by all Mahaprabhu's fans and devotees. And then that's place is called Vidyanagar. And then Param Gurudev says that, so on that return, Mahaprabhu is returned as a sannyasi, whereas previously they cherished the Leela, the sweet, intimate Leela of Gauranga before his sannyas, during the time of the kirtans at Srivas Pandit's house and the Harinam Sankirtan around Navadvip. This is the Nimai, this is the Gauranga Mahaprabhu that is cherished by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Why? Because it's more intimate than after he took sannyas. Once he takes sannyas, there is a certain amount of authority, a certain amount of distance, a certain amount of respect needs to be given to that sannyas ashram. In other words, there is a certain vaibhav, grandeur, and with that, as expressed before, comes to the inverse degree, comes a lack of intimacy, less intimacy. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur worships the Gauranga, he is attached to the Gauranga Mahaprabhu prior to sannyas. So when Mahaprabhu returns to Vidyanagar after taking sannyas, 5 years after his tour of South India, he returns to Vidyanagar as a sannyasi and everyone is mobbing him. That is, in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's vision, akin to the gopis meeting Krishna at Kurukshetra. So he says, if you want to perform Rath Yatra in Navadvip, then do it from Vidyanagar, taking the Rath cart back to the house of Srivas Pandit. As in dragging the Sannyas Mahaprabhu back into the intimacy of the nocturnal kirtans at the house of Srivas Pandit. So on that condition, with that qualification strictly applied, Rath Yatra may be done in Navadvip. But back to today's Rath Yatra in Jagannath Puri, the event, of course, is particularly pertinent to Western devotees. We've discussed the inner meaning of Rath Yatra, but modernly, in today's world, it's particularly relevant to Western devotees, non-Indians. Because as we know, if you have non-Indian heritage, if you're not racially an Indian, you cannot get, or Hindu I should say, if you're not brown-skinned Hindu, you cannot get into the Jagannath temple. They won't allow you in. They'll block you out, block you at the door. It's probably the most famous temple in India which does not allow, they say non-Hindus, whatever a non-Hindu is. They say, well, whatever a Hindu is, define a Hindu for me. Under the umbrella of Hinduism is a multiplicity of different faiths. Some of them almost diametrically opposite to each other in terms of ideology and practice. But anyway, if you're not a Hindu, you can't get in. But that is not particularly objectionable. Some have. For instance, acharyas have different moods, and that mood sometimes is constructed or expressed to help disciples at a particular level. So when Swami Maharaj Prabhupada's young disciples discovered that here is this holiest of holy places in our tradition, where Mahaprabhu would express his ecstasies and dance in front of the Jagannath deity, the whole culture of Mahaprabhu's second half of life was revolved. His whole life revolved around the Jagannath deity and the Jagannath temple. It's a theme that pervades the entire second half of his life. And then here we are, a new generation of Westerners joining, becoming Vaishnavas, yet they're not allowed into the sacred, holy place. They've made probably more sacrifice than your average Hindu, or even someone who appreciates or becomes a Vaishnava in India. They've given up more. They've traveled overseas to come to this place, and yet they're not being let in. What is this? So, rather than go too deep into it, Swami Maharaj Prabhupada used to say, well, this is not correct. Their vision is not correct. They really should allow you in, and that, they're in the bodily consciousness, etc. So, you could say Prabhupada sided with his young kid devotees to give them some confidence, to not make them feel hopeless. Because sometimes in the very beginning of one's faith journey, the person's condition can be a little delicate, and so all encouragement is required. Too much criticism may cause a person to lose their faith. May do, yes. So Prabhupada gave a lot of, you could say, exaggerated encouragement to his disciples. It's like a little boy goes to his father and goes, "Daddy, I'm a Superman. I'm Superman." And the dad goes, "Yeah, I'm really strong." And he says, "Yes, yes." Now the little boy is not, relatively speaking, not so strong at all. He's not a Superman. He's not a heroic fireman or whatever, policeman. But if the father goes, no, you're just a little boy, just stop thinking like that, which is objectively true. It's objectively true. But he can't say the truth. Why? Because the truth will be damaging. The truth will not be helpful to the development of that boy. So instead he says, yes, you're strong, you're a superhero. The boy goes around thinking he's a superhero, and it's good for his psychological development. It's good for his confidence. It's good for his growth moving forward. It's the only way he can actually maybe become a superhero in real life. If he constantly gets squashed, he's never going to achieve that. So instead he's encouraged, even when it's not true. So Prabhupada did the same with his disciples. He says, some of you are pure devotees. And they're like, whoa, yeah. And so he gave them encouragement. You can get back to Godhead in this very life. And they're like, whoa, yeah. If he said, no, it's going to take 100 lives, they're like, oh, forget this, go down the pub. So he gave them encouragement, as a father would do to a young son with high ambitions or high fantasies. So when they're like, Prabhupada, they won't let us into the temple. He's like, yeah, well, that's, instead of explaining the deeper perspective, he would give them a perspective which they could run with for the time being, which they could appreciate for the time being. Then Param Gurudev gives us another perspective. And that is based on a deeper appreciation, a deeper culture of humility. Not to say that the perspective that Swami Maharaj Prabhupada gave was wrong. That is, as explained with the example, appropriate to that time and place. But it's not the perspective forevermore. At some stage it becomes redundant and gets replaced with an enhanced, deeper perspective. And that perspective expressed by Guru Maharaj is based on the behaviors of the devotees in Mahaprabhu's time who also were not allowed into the temple. And these are the devotees that we worship. Who are they? Haridas Thakur, Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami. They did not enter the temple voluntarily. Maybe they would have been allowed, maybe not, but they voluntarily did not, because they understood that the temple regulations would normally prohibit them from. So they didn't try to test that. They didn't try to barge their way in or manipulate their way in. They stayed outside. Haridas Thakur was especially given a place by Mahaprabhu near the beach where he could see the chakra on the top of the temple from there. And every day Mahaprabhu would visit him. Every day. Tell me another person that Mahaprabhu would visit every day. And this is someone who is not allowed into the temple. When Rupa Goswami visits Jagannath Puri, as we read in chapter 1 of Antilila, he stays with Haridas Thakur, Rupa Goswami, and Haridas Thakur. Rupa Goswami is the head of the school, the head of the Sampradaya. We're all Rupanugas, followers of Rupa Goswami. And he never went into the temple at Puri.
I know of a Vaishnava, he went there and he said, he's Brahmin and he's from Bengal, he's born in Bengal and Brahmin. And he said, why don't you let me in? Because he went to the West to do studies now. He said, oh yes, but you've been overseas. And I wouldn't let him in even either.
Anyway, so, yeah. So, they chose voluntarily not to enter the temple. And Mahaprabhu was happy with that. So then, who are some Westerners who've just recently shaved their head and just learned how to put on a dhoti, thinking that they have superior rights to Rupa Goswami? It's kind of ludicrous. But anyway, I remember reading one post saying, and this is still, unfortunately, this is still believed by some people. I remember listening to it when I was in another institution, listening to a guru talking in that institution. Someone asked him, why aren't we allowed into the Jagannath temple? And the guru said, because the people that run it are in Maya. And so then they didn't understand Prabhupada's take. They didn't understand his purpose. And anyway, we won't go too much into that. I remember reading someone else saying that what we should do is just get 1,000 devotees in a massive kirtan outside the Jagannath temple and just bust in through the doors. They won't be able to stop us. So you still have this kind of incorrect understanding, but it may develop in time. When can I just finish this theme and then I'll let you comment. I just want to finish this particular theme. So when those who did try to not even violate the rules, entry rules of the temple, there's no violation, but they tried to correct or improve the standards of the Jagannath temple, we see what happened to them. There's two famous instances. The first is with Ramanuja. Ramanuja Acharya had a dream in which Narayan himself appeared to him and he said, I want you to tour around all of my temples in India and bring them up to a certain standard of worship. Because in some of them the standards were slipping. He said, I want you to standardize worship at a particular quality threshold. And so Ramanuja did that. He traveled around and he uplifted the puja, worship standards in all the temples. And when he got to the Jagannath temple, what happened? He woke up. He was teleported 300 miles south to Kurmakshetra when he went into the Jagannath temple. And he was here, I'm on a mandate from Narayan himself to uplift the standards here. And that night he went to sleep and he woke up the next morning in Kurmakshetra, which if you look on the map is like several hundred kilometers south along the east coast. And he's like, where am I? And he's asking the locals, where am I? And you're in Kurmakshetra. And he's like, what? I went to sleep in Puri, woke up in Kurmakshetra. So that's what happened to Ramanujacharya when he tried to interfere with the systems of the Jagannath temple. And the second famous example is Pundarik Vidyanidhi, who, and in the Jagannath temple they would use cloth which hadn't been, you could say, properly rinsed. They would make, and when they made the cotton, they would starch the thread so it would hold on the loom better, something like that. They would soak the thread in rice starch, and then it would spin better on the machine. And then before you wore the cloth, you would wash the starch out a few times, and then the cloth would be ready to wear. But in the Jagannath temple, they weren't doing that. So when Pundarik Vidyanidhi, who is the father of Srimati Radharani in Krishna Lila, Vrishabhanu, he goes and he sees what they're doing, offering this unprepared cloth to Jagannath, Subhadra, Baladev, and he says, this is a bit crude. You should wash the cloth and prepare it properly, offering it to the Lord. And then he goes to sleep that night, and he has a dream. Jagannath and Balaram have come and approached him in the dream, and they're slapping him, and they're going, don't come round here messing with our servitors. And they're slapping him on his cheeks. And he wakes up and he goes, that was an intense dream. And he touches his cheeks and they're all red. He looks in a mirror and his cheeks are all red and puffy and swollen, like they've had a good beating. So this is what happens to the Shuddha Vaish Ramanujacharya, Pundarik Vidyanidhi, when they go and try and interfere with the rules and standards of the Jagannath temple. What to speak of some dude, again, he's just learning to follow the four regs. He doesn't have a right to interfere.
If you get in there, what do they do to you? Because that's happened, isn't it?
Yeah, if you get found out, then you might get roughed up a little bit, and you just get unceremoniously kind of frog marched out.
And throw everything away as well, throw everything out.
I don't know exactly. What would happen. I've met people that have snuck in, people that can pass for an Indian, people with like olive brown skin, can dress up as an Indian, dress up and kind of sneak in with a group. That's been done before. But the other perspective is this. The whole theme of Rath Yatra is one of Vipralamba. Vipralamba means separation, or union in separation. So separation externally, longing for union inside, Vipralamba. Srimati Radharani's mood of separation from Krishna, the very essence of Mahaprabhu's inner purpose is to taste her love. And that love is found in its full intensity in separation. That's where it really blossoms. That's where its power is known. And so Rath Yatra is one event in which that is expressed, as we've discussed. Dragging Krishna back to Puri, meeting Krishna. There's a union, but there's also a separation. It's the very zenith of that happens at Rath Yatra, where Radharani has actually met Krishna, but the meeting is not the same. There cannot be the sweet interchange. So there's union, but there's also deep separation. So the very zenith, the very pinnacle of this Vipralamba Bhav that Mahaprabhu is tasting is there at Rath Yatra. He's tasting it at Rath Yatra. So, for us Westerners, we can consider ourselves actually a little blessed that the only time we can see Jagannath is at Rath Yatra. The rest of the time, separation. So, there is a kind of a union after separation. We can get to appreciate Jagannath more because that is the only time that a Westerner can see the deities of Jagannath, Subhadra, Baladev in person. The rest of the time we can't. So it makes it much more special, much more important, much more of a powerful experience than it would if we could go into that temple any time. So it's actually a special thing. In that light, it actually makes Rath Yatra a very special occasion. You can only see Jagannath once per year.
Is there any film we can
So-
see what it's like inside there?
So I'm not sure. Anyway, so all of this is harmonized with the proper perspective. What seems initially like an unfortunate rule, an unfortunate situation, you can't go into the temple, is actually a blessing. When you do see Jagannath, that appreciation is so much stronger and more developed. The meaning and the power of Rath Yatra is so much more for not being able to see Jagannath just at any time one chooses. So today is that day, of course, when us heathens can get to see Lord Jagannath in person. And I've been to the Rath Yatra myself a few times. And at some point they drag the carts up the road and then they park them. Last time I was there, I actually climbed up the cart, onto the cart, and standing face to face with Lord Jagannath.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that you on there?
No, I just climbed up.
On the big wheel?
Climbed up the wheel and over the thing.
Do you get thrown off? By them?
No,
And
there was no one at the front. I waited for a quiet time. I was with one devotee from Mauritius and he said, go now. You'll get away with it because you're a Westerner. So I climbed up and I was standing in front of Lord Jagannath, like literally a meter away. Jagannath is huge, like a lot bigger when you're up that close, a lot bigger than you see from a distance. And I'm just paying repairs, and then a panda comes round. He's like shocked. He's like came round. They're congregating on the back of the cart, and he comes round to the front where I'm standing. He's like, "Oi!" And then of course with that they all come running round. And I was told if they see you just give them some money. And so I had a pocket full of 100 rupees, and I pulled out 100 rupees, and I gave it to him, and he goes, "What is this? What is this?" And I didn't know what he meant by that. What is this? You trying to bribe me? Or what is this? 100 rupees? Give me 1,000. I didn't know what he meant.
A bit of both.
Yeah, maybe. But he puts it in his pocket anyway, from memory, and then they started to get a little bit aggressive, like, "Ah!" And then I just scooted back over the cart and down. But that was a nice memory that I will cherish.
Wonderful memory.
And then they
But-
were brave, weren't
Sorry?
they? Brave.
Well, I just took the opportunity. It was just very lucky. There was just you could say, a small window of time. There was no one standing on the cart. There were a few people mingling around, quite unusual. The carts had been parked. It was a time when the Rath Yatra itself had finished. They'd taken the carts up outside the Gundicha Mandir. People mill around for another couple of hours and then sort of drift away. They're in it's dusk time. They're kind of packing down the carts, getting ready for the evening. Just an interim little time window where it's very quiet. There was a lull, and I took my chance.
And don't they change the deities and they at some point they change them. They no one is the same one, and they put them in the river. What do they do with the old ones and that?
Every 12 years, they change the deities every 12 years. And there's a particular set of rituals that are followed. They have to locate a particular tree. I think it's a neem. There's different trees that they use, but I think it's a neem. And it has to have particular symbols on the tree. So basically they spend as soon as one murti is carved, they spend the next 12 years identifying a tree for the next murti. So after 12 years...
And what do they do with the animals?
They have a place called the Vaikunta... there's what you'd call I don't want to use the word graveyard, but there's a section in the temple compound, which is fairly large. There's a place in the temple compound. It's like a deep vault, and they put the deities in there and seal it up. So it's like they entomb them in the... I forget, the place is called the Vaikuntha Garden. But I forget, it's not... Is it Tota Vaikuntha? Because Tota means garden in Assamese, but not Assamese, Orisan. But I don't think it's called Tota Vaikuntha. It's called Vaikuntha something else. It means Vaikuntha Garden. Yeah, it's a big space. So that's where all the old deities go. So every 12 years they have a new one. So anyway, today is that day, Rath Yatra, and Gurudev used to go personally many years. He would lead a festival down there, which was quite a little difficult before the mutt got its place in Puri at Chatak Parvat. Before the mutt got its ashram, they'd have to rent accommodation. But then the mutt purchased its building, which is very nice, lovely location. A minute walk from the beach, and then you can go get to the Jagannath temple the other way, near Tota Gopinath, Gadadhar Pandit's deity, near Chatak Parvat, which Mahaprabhu mistook for Govardhan. And then in his later years, when he didn't travel so much, Gurudev would watch it on TV, because they broadcast it live on Indian TV. You could probably watch it on the internet live right now. So that's some glories of Rath Yatra. There are other things to say, no doubt. There was some other things to say, but I forget right now. Oh, that's right. I wanted to mention how Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was born in Jagannath Puri. His father, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, was living in Jagannath Puri as a magistrate. And he had a house which was pretty much on the main road where the Rath carts would pass. So on the day of Rath Yatra, the carts stopped inexplicably. They stopped outside the house of Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and his son, Bimala Prasad, as his name was as a child, his mother carried him out, his mother Bhagavati carried him out, and the carts had stopped for how long exactly, I don't remember, but they'd pretty much stopped inexplicably, and they couldn't be moved. And so his mother took him out and presented him before the deity of Jagannath, and the garland fell down. The garland fell down from the deity, which is a traditional sign of great blessing from the deity. If someone approaches the deity and at that time the garland falls down, and he says approaches the deity, pays obeisances or submits a request or a prayer, and the garland falls off the deity, then it's considered a sign of endorsement and great blessing. The other instance of that is Kaviraj Goswami, when he is seeking permission to write Chaitanya Charitamrita. So he goes before the deity of Madan Mohan and submits his request, and the garland falls down, and the pujari gets the garland and puts it on Kaviraj Goswami. It's a classic sign of blessing, the most auspicious omen. So this happens, the garland of Jagannath falls down when Saraswati Thakur's mother presents him to the deity. And then, of course, his disciple, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Prabhupada, what does he do? He takes Jagannath Rath Yatra all around the world. So he's the biggest devotee of, we could say, Lord Jagannath in the modern era. The disciple of that person who's, as a baby, the garland of Lord Jagannath fell down to bless him. When Prabhupada was a young boy, Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, he had a little Rath Yatra set, and he would play Rath Yatra in Kolkata. So obviously a great devotee of Lord Jagannath from before, and in his life, took it all around the world, which is kind of, when you think about it, it's kind of miraculous, this traditional festival, which confined pretty much just to Jagannath Puri, and now it's celebrated in every major city of the world. Quite miraculous. Apparently so, yes, even in Bournemouth now. Now, of course, it's important to not just celebrate Jagannath Rath Yatra, but being aware of what you're doing when you celebrate it, because it's not just a cultural festival. It is of the deepest import of, it touches on the very deepest theme of Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy or theology. The very deepest sentiment. It is not just a, whoa, mic amplified kirtan and accordions and swinging around and looking pretty and whatever. It's not that. It's important to keep the very actual meaning of Rath Yatra alive. Otherwise it will all be lost. It will all descend into varying degrees of imitation, which is sahajism. You're pretending, you're conflating, you're confusing what you're doing, the emotions you're getting with spiritual sentiment. That's sahajism. So it's important to keep the focus, and that's why Gurudev said, unless the devotees, he was referring to one larger society, unless they can keep the standards, the ethos of Saraswati Thakur, keep strict to that, follow that, then within 50 years it will descend into sahajism. So it's important when one does Rath Yatra, it's been taken out of its heartland, out of its homeland and spread around the world for a purpose. And that purpose is not just a cultural festival. That purpose is Mahaprabhu's purpose. Swami Maharaj Prabhupada's purpose is identical with Mahaprabhu's purpose. And what is Mahaprabhu's purpose? The distribution of Srimati Radharani's Mahabhav. What is the Madhurya Leela of Krishna is now Audarya, it's now being distributed. And Swami Maharaj Prabhupada's desire was that Rath Yatra would facilitate this, not that it's a cultural festival, or not that it's, some people even suggesting that it's be framed as an environmental festival. Look at us with our carts. We're not using motor cars, we've got a carts. So this kind of what you call bastardization of the actual inner meaning of Rath Yatra is not at all advisable. So that needs to be kept in mind. But they had
three, at the moment they had mini deities, they had medium-sized ones, they had larger ones, and they came down on a trailer on the back of a van. They were quite big, and on the way down on the M25, one of the wheels fell off.
Oh yes, that's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
and it still made it on three wheels, all the way down the M3 to Warwick.
What is meaning?
What is the meaning of that? Yeah.
With the wheel holding on. But they made it with them.
But the history, so before we finish, I'll just touch on the history of Rath Yatra in the West, because it is relevant to us today, Rath Yatra. Today in general, and today literally, today generically and today literally, is that when Swami Maharaj Prabhupada first brought the Krishna teachings from India to Lower East Side of New York, and it caught on with the lower classes, he did try with the upper classes. He did try and sell his books to the upper classes in New York society. But beyond a kind of a courteous interest, no one really took it up as such. A little similar to Saraswati Thakur's preachers in the 1930s in London. They met with the high society. The secretary of the mission was, I think, Lord Zetland, who is the Secretary of State for India. So these are high government officials giving their patronage. But in terms of actual practice and taking it up, no one really did that. And we see the same with the previous emissaries from Bengal. For instance, first we had Vivekananda giving his Brahman, and then we had Yogananda giving his Paramatma, and then finally we had Swami Maharaj Prabhupada giving his Bhagavan conception. We have Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, each coming in succession from Bengal to America. So Vivekananda and Yogananda, they each found their clientele in the higher society. There were no hippies at that time. Vivekananda was in the 1890s, Yogananda was 20s, 30s, like that. But they found their customers, for want of a better word, their audience amongst the upper classes, the educated classes, who were liberal, enlightened, university educated, etc., able to appreciate his message. First Vivekananda's Vedanta and then Yogananda's Yoga. So Srila Prabhupada also, he did make some efforts to approach the upper classes, but beyond giving that sort of token, polite appreciation, there was no actual sacrifice. There was no commitment or engagement. It was only when he found himself on the Lower East Side, in the slum of New York, the Bowery it's called, with the druggies and the hippies and all of the other delinquents and reprobates that lived in that part of New York, that he found some customers, some people who actually took seriously the message. They were the down and outers. The hippie, the bohemians, the drug addicts, the promiscuous people. So anyway, from New York, its next port of call was San Francisco. Again, San Francisco is a hippie mecca at the time, Haight-Ashbury. So they rented a temple right there in Haight-Ashbury. In the summer of 1967, the hippie movement is really coming into force in those years, the second half of the 1960s, first half of the 1970s. So 67 was the beginning, actually the peak, you could say maybe 67, 68, 69, 70, San Francisco. Anyway, so it's blossoming in full force. And this Hare Krishna faith comes into it, into this mix. And there's all sorts of hippies visiting the temple, and they're advertising all the new disciples who have been around maximum 1 year from New York. They're there preaching. Prabhupada is staying upstairs above the shop front. And they're holding their kirtans, and all the hippies are wandering in. And one hippie boy wanders in, and he's got an interesting looking necklace that one of the devotees spots. Actually, it was Hayagriva, he spots it. This is documented in Hayagriva's book called The Hare Krishna Explosion. It's a nice, interesting book to read. So this hippie boy wanders in, and he's got a necklace of these little figurines. And Hayagriva says to him, what are they? And he said, I got them from a shop down somewhere in town. And so Hayagriva goes, can I buy it off you? And he buys the necklace off him for $1. And he goes and shows it to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada is immediately, whoa, Jai! And what the boy did is he had this some little juggernauts about this big, a couple of inches, and he's like sewed them onto a necklace. He wanders into the temple, and Prabhupada is like, Jai, Jagannath has come. And then, so Hayagriva finds out where this boy got them from. There's an import shop in San Francisco, and they have products from India. So he goes down, he buys out their stock of Jagannath, little Jagannaths. So Prabhupada then commissions Shyamasundar. Now Shyamasundar later came here to London and was instrumental in meeting the Beatles and establishing ISKCON here in London a year or so later. So this is 1967. Shyamasundar was a carver and a woodworker, and so Prabhupada commissions him to carve a much bigger Jagannath, like about 3 foot instead of 3 inches. And so Shyamasundar carves it according to this little Jagannath with the same paint, the same shape, and the same design, same painted, same colors. So they have this big Jagannath has just appeared. And so then Prabhupada is like, well, what does Jagannath do? He goes on Rath Yatra. So they made a Rath Yatra in 1967. So Jagannath's arrival was just very spontaneous. A boy wanders in with a Jagannath necklace, and the greatest devotee of Lord Jagannath at the time sees it, is in San Francisco, has a larger deity carved by a devotee, and then they organize a Rath Yatra on a flatbed truck. Jagannath is just on the back of a flatbed truck. It's kind of been painted, and it's got some flags hanging off it. All the devotees out the front doing kirtan. Very slapstick. By today's standard, extremely slapstick. But very devotional and with childlike spontaneity. And then at the end of the festival, they're distributing prasad. And this one who they thought was someone distributing prasad has these like rock candies. And he's distributing them. But they've been soaked in LSD. They have the LSD drops put on the rock candies. And so some of the devotees get quite high. They get quite trippy. Hayagriva describes that incident in the book as well. So that was the first Rath Yatra. And from there it became a tradition and just spread around the world. So it wasn't as if it was so planned by Srila Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. But you could say it was his desire. Look what he did when he was a child in Kolkata, Rath Yatra. So the Lord comes to facilitate the desires of the devotees. As a child he wanted to do Rath Yatra, and then as an old man, Lord Jagannath comes to him. Let's do Rath Yatra all around the world. So that's how it happened.
And there was in the Bhakti Yoga magazine, a devotee who did the first Rath Yatra, he died of cancer, and it says that Prabhupada said he went straight back to God.
Yeah, Jayananda. They keep his photo on the Rath card. What was your question, Prabhu?
I just want to add, I remember the story when the devotees, when they built the Jagannath's deities here, and it's Prabhupada told, some from the devotees smoking still, yeah. And when Prabhupada came out from building, Prabhupada saw the Marlboro cigarettes above.
Oh yeah, sitting on Jagannath's head, yeah.
and this is situation told to us how many or how much Prabhupada was tolerating for his first devotees, disciples.
Yes, they didn't know what was expected of them. Yeah, he was carving, I think maybe Shamasunda. Shamasunda was the carver, so he was carving and he was puffing away and he had his pack of cigarettes on Jagannath. Tobacco. They took that Jagannath down to Golden Gate Park. They thought, let's take him out on a little ride. They took him down to the park. And all the hippies were dancing around in a circle around Jagannath. Like, as, you know, he's like this new pagan deity is in town. They were dancing around. And they called up, one of the devotees ran back to the temple and told Prabhupada, Jagannath's in the park and the hippies are going mental. Prabhupada's like, what? You can't just take the deity off the altar and take him down the park. It's like us taking Mahaprabhu off the altar. And let's take him down to the park and have a have a bit of a party. And so Prabhupada appreciated their childlike spontaneity and naivety. And he went down there. Immediately he went down. The history says that as soon as Prabhupada heard, he got up and was like, walked briskly the 2 blocks down to the park and sat next to Jagannath and did kirtan while the hippies like danced around in a circle. There is a photo of that. But then afterwards he said that, normally the deity stays in the temple and Jagannath goes out on Rath Yatra. Apart from that, keep him in the temple. He's not to be showcased around spontaneously, like, for whatever. So we'll finish there, I think. Gone a little over time. There's many more things that can be said about Rath Yatra. It is one of the key festivals on the Gaudiya Vaishnav calendar, of course. And it was also another point is that it was the festival that all the Bengal devotees would travel to. They would travel down from Bengal to arrive, to time their arrival before, or in time for the Rath Yatra festival. Because it was very special. Mahaprabhu would dance and they would all dance. He would divide the devotees up into kirtan groups with 2 mridangas in each group and something like 4 kartals in each group, and a singer and a dancer, 7 different kirtan groups. And the king would watch from his balcony with his entourage. So it was quite an event. And the devotees would come down for Rath Yatra and stay. After Rath Yatra, Chaturmasya starts sometime soon after Rath Yatra. And so the devotees would stay for Chaturmasya and then return to Bengal. That was the traditional schedule. So it's also special, and that was a time of great reunion between Mahaprabhu and all the devotees. And of course, today, we should mention that today is also the disappearance day of Swarup Damodar Goswami, who was one of Mahaprabhu's most intimate associates. What year exactly Swarup Damodar is said to have passed away, I don't know. Maybe it's written down, I'll have to check. But I don't know. It's likely that it was the Rath Yatra in the year following Mahaprabhu's departure. So 2 days ago, we had the disappearance of Gadadhar Pandit. So Gadadhar Pandit and Swarup Damodar are two of Mahaprabhu's Madhurya Rasa associates, which means his closest associates. And Ramananda Rai being another one. And Jagadananda Pandit also, but not a slightly different flavor of Madhura Rasa. So the most intimate associates, the trio, Ramananda Rai, Swarup Damodar, Gadadhar Pandit. So we have Gadadhar Pandit passing away 2 days before the Rath Yatra, and then we have Swarup Damodar passing away on the Rath Yatra. Was it of the same year? I don't know. I'd like to find out, because Gadadhar Pandit passed away the year following Mahaprabhu. So it's been intimated that Mahaprabhu passed away sometime after the Rath Yatra of 1534. Sometime after that. So was it an intense, kind of painful remembrance as the anniversary of Mahaprabhu's departure approached, and the memory of the ecstatic Rath Yatra kirtans, that the separation all became too much for his intimate devotees, Gadadhar Pandit, Swarup Damodar? It's likely. It's likely that they passed away. Gadadhar Pandit passed away 2 days ago, and Swarup Damodar today, so in close proximity, as these memories of Mahaprabhu's Rath Yatra Leela, and then his own departure the year before, disappearance the year before, as that anniversary approached, and the memories became overwhelmingly powerful. Anyway, we'll finish there. Jai Srila Gurudev, Jai Shri Jagannath Rath Yatra Ki, Jai Srila Bhakti Sunda Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki, Jai Shri Swarup Damodar Goswami Tirobhav Titi Ki, Jai. It's also, I think, the disappearance day of Shivananda Sain, so I've heard. I don't think it's listed on our calendar, but I think it is. Alrighty, who is singing today? Anjali?
Well, I do know the Hari Harai, but I
Very good.
have a book to you. Just in case I stumble. 60, isn't it? Oh, 60. Oh, thank you. All right. Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha.
Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha.
Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha.
Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha.
Gopala Govinda Ram Sri Madhusudan.
Giridhari Gopinath Namaha. Jai Saparikara Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Sundar Radha Girijaju Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sri Dhadev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shri Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Vishva Varenya Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Samaveda Vaishnav Mandala Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat West London Ki Jai. Sri Jagannath Rathayatra Ki Jai. Sri Swarup Damodar Goswami Tirobhav Titi Ki Jai. Sri Shivananda Sain Tirobhav Titi Ki Jai. Sri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Nitai Go Premanandi Hari Devananda Prabhu Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai.